Last week, I posted a video about cardio or no cardio in midlife, and I took a deeper dive into the importance of strength training, and I touched on walking as a great form of cardio. But what I didn't talk to you guys about is what zone you want to be in when you're doing your cardio. But today, that's what we're gonna talk about, what zone you need to be in if you are on a fat loss journey, or just a journey to be in really great shape. Welcome to Boom 50 Fitness. My name's Regan, and this is your channel for all things health and fitness in your 50s and beyond. So if you want an easier way to burn calories and lose weight and get really fit, stick around because that's what we're talking about today. And what I'm going to teach you about is really gentle on your body and actually very fun. Well, at least I think so. Work smarter, not harder. Today, we're going to be talking about Zone 2 cardio. And I know Zone 2 cardio can be hard to wrap your brain around, especially for a lot of us out there that were brainwashed into thinking, work hard, sweat more, burn more calories, and on and on and on. I mean, I taught everything from kickboxing to boot camps. Right out of college, I sometimes taught up to 5 classes a day, and you know how I got to each class? I rode my bike. And one of the things that made me so proud as an instructor is when I saw my class walk out drenched in sweat. There's something really satisfying about that when you know you kicked some butts. I mean, for a long time now, probably the last couple decades, people thought the only way to get a great workout is if it was high intensity. You know those workouts you're talking about where you work so hard, you're burning a bajillion calories and you're drenched in sweat. And it was pretty fun. We loved it. I mean, at least I know I loved it because I have always had a little bit of an exercise addiction. So the thought of just staying in Zone 2, we'll go over the zones in a little bit, but the thought of staying in just Zone 2 just seemed a little too good to be true, right? How could something that's actually gentler on your body and way more enjoyable to do be better for you? Are you going to get the same health benefits if you're not drenched in sweat? Or maybe you're thinking, there's no way Zone 2 training can be great for fat loss. If you've done any research on this topic, some of the experts will make it really complicated, but today I'm just going to simplify things for you. And maybe you already know the answer to this, at least I know you know one, but we'll talk about what exercises in Zone 2 are the absolutely best exercises to do to burn fat. So stop thinking that this has to be way more complicated than it has to be. At the end of the day, let's just stop splitting hairs and keep it simple. As a trainer, I kind of love all that stuff, but today, let's just keep it simple. The older I get, the more I realize you've got to focus more on the big picture, not all the tiny little stuff. Yeah, the number on the scale, that's the tiny little stuff. One way to understand the different types of zone training is you've all heard about high intensity interval training or HIIT workouts. I've talked about them on this channel. I have taught those style workouts. I still love those style workouts. So in a high intensity interval training class, you will bring your heart rate up to the absolute maximum. So if you think about the rate of perceived exertion on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being no effort or very little bit of effort and 10 being max effort, when you're in a HIIT style workout, you're bringing yourself to a 9 or a 10 several times throughout that workout. And I am definitely not saying HIIT style workouts are bad. In fact, they are great for you. However, once you're in midlife, I'm talking 40s, 50s, and beyond, we need to change things up a little bit. We need to scale back a little bit, be a little gentler on our bodies. That doesn't mean we have to take away that type of training, but you probably don't want to be doing it as often as you might be. It should definitely not be your end-all be-all type of exercise. It should be bonus to your zone 2 steady state training. And so I said, if we're looking at the RPE scale, or the rate of perceived exertion, I will pop that right over here if you've never seen it before. I used to have it in every single aerobic studio that I ever taught at. And we would use that to see how difficult people were working. But when we're talking zones, zone 1 to 5, in a HIIT style workout, you will be getting to zones 4 and 5. And like I said, that would be like a 9 or a 10 on the rate of perceived exertion scale. And many of us for years and years thought the only type of workout that was worth the effort, I mean, myself included, had to be really, really hard. We had to push ourselves. We had to be in zone 4 and 5, have short rest periods, and be drenched in sweat. Those were those workouts where you had to be all in and pretty much bring yourself to the point of exertion by the end of every class. Or if you were outside doing intervals on your own, by the time you were done your workout. Okay, before we go any further, before we go on, let's specifically talk about the different zones. Okay, zone 1 is just pretty low intensity exercise. A lot of times this could be your warm up, as long as you're doing a nice low intensity warm up, as you should be. If you go to a class and they jump right into what seems to be a high intensity warm up, just bring it down a bit. And then another great form would just be some slow walking, where you can talk, and it's very, very comfortable and very, very enjoyable. So basically zone 1 is just light activity where you are working at about 40 to 50% of your capacity, which would be your heart rate. Okay, now zone 2, what we're gonna really be focusing on today is where you're working at 50 to 60% of your maximum heart rate. So a great comparison to be in zone 2 would be just a brisk walk. And zone 2 is where you can comfortably carry on a conversation with someone. Maybe if you were on the phone with someone and on a walk, they might hear that you're a tiny bit breathless, but you can still carry on a conversation. So they would know you were working out, but it's obvious that you're not doing something really, really difficult or strenuous. Okay, zone 3, that's where you're working in the 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. This could be like a light jog or a really fast walk, where it's just getting a little bit more difficult to carry on a conversation because you're gasping for breath a little bit more than you were in zone 2. In fact, you'll probably get a little uncomfortable if you need to carry on a conversation in zone 3. And I've got to say, this is where I see people make the biggest mistakes when it comes to cardio. They get into zone 3 and they stay there instead of staying in zone 2. You guys, I'm telling you, you can work out easier. This is coming from a trainer. That should make you happy, but I know it's a mind shift. So let's get that mind shifted in the right direction so that you're working smarter, not harder. All right, zone 4 is when you're working at 70 to 85% of your maximum heart rate. Okay, so in zone 4, this is pretty hard effort. If we compare it to going on a run, you're running pretty fast. So in zone 4, you can no longer carry on a conversation. It would just be too difficult. And yes, you are working hard in zone 4. Okay, zone 5, this is when you are at 85 to 100% of your maximum heart rate. This is where you're working very, very hard. This would be really short bursts, say like sprinting. So this is your max effort. This is where you're going for broke. You cannot maintain this zone 5 for 1 or 2 minutes. It's seconds, maybe 30 seconds max, but it is max effort, as hard as you can push, which for a lot of people, especially if you didn't grow up playing sports, this can be a tough zone for people to get into. They may think they're in this zone when they're actually in zone 4. But if you know you are at max effort and you cannot go past 30 seconds max, then you have probably made it to zone 5. Congratulations. So if you think about how you have trained in the past as an athlete or a long distance runner or a biker, I know for myself personally, when I was a big time road runner, once a week, it was on Mondays, I got it over with on Mondays, I would do sprint intervals. And that was by far 100% the hardest workout of my week. Ooh, I'm so glad I don't train like that anymore. That was decades ago. All right, so let's get back to zone 2 now that you know exactly what all the different zones are. Zone 2 is where the magic happens, my friends. All right, you know I talk a lot about walking, and that is just great zone 2 training, but maybe there's a different activity you'd rather do. Think about something that you could do for an extended period of time, some sort of endurance training. And it would have to be at a level where you could carry on a conversation with someone. So you're able to talk, and you should be able to do it for a minimum of 30 minutes. And you have to remember, zone 2 for you might look a lot different for me or for someone else. If you're new to exercise, zone 2 might be a really slow walk. And that's okay, we have to start somewhere. And you can't really look at someone on a treadmill or on a walk or riding their bike and know that they're in zone 2 training, because it's all about how your body feels, that rate of perceived exertion. So the rate of perceived exertion scale is just an easy way to do it, especially if you don't want to be wearing a heart rate monitor. So like I said earlier, the rate of perceived exertion scale is 1 to 10. So if you are trying to stay in zone 2 and you're not wearing a heart rate monitor, 1 being the easiest, 10 being the most difficult, you want to stay somewhere between 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5. And not exceeding that. That's where people get into a little bit of trouble when they head out of zone 2. So what types of exercise can you do besides walking to stay in zone 2? Basically, you guys, you could pick any form of exercise that you could carry on a conversation. Swimming, you couldn't carry on a conversation, but if you're a swimmer, this might be a great activity for you, but just scale back on that pace a little bit. For me, since I hardly ever swim, if I went to swim, I would pop out of zone 2 so quickly. But hiking, maybe even running, if it's a really slow jog, I like to call that a slog. Hiking, biking, anything, just scaling back on the intensity and staying in zone 2. If you can carry on a conversation and you're enjoying it, you're in zone 2. All right, I know I said enjoyable, and it should be enjoyable and you should be able to talk, but know that you're working out. You've popped out of zone 1, which is just your little warm-up. So remember that. So on that rate of perceived exertion, somewhere between 3, 4, and 5. So I know it might be harder, like taking a class when there are people around you really pushing it. I know that when I owned my spin studio, I think it'd be pretty hard to stay in zone 2, although I did have some people who would stay in zone 2. Or if you pop on your Peloton and you're taking your favorite instructor's class and they are pushing it, just try to scale back, do that talk test, and you're probably going to enjoy the ride a lot more, and you're probably going to have a lot more energy throughout the day. Yeah, you don't have to leave it all on the trail or the road or in the spin class or in the HIIT workout. Save a little bit, try to stay in zone 2, baby. So you have to be really aware of that threshold, which gets really hard when you're in a group setting. But just do that talk test, think of the rate of perceived exertion, and scale back when you need to, and don't bump from zone 2 to zone 3, especially if you are on a fat loss journey. I know, it seems counterintuitive, but it's true. So this trainer right here is not the only trainer that is suggesting zone 2 cardio for fat loss. The studies are proving it, and we're getting out of our old ways and the research is there. If you want to burn fat, stay in zone 2. There are several reasons for this. One of the reasons is zone 2 training will build a strong aerobic foundation. Again, counterintuitive. You're thinking, no, I should push my heart harder, get in zone 3, 4, even 5, and really get that heart pumping. But we're specifically talking fat loss right here. So for fat loss in your 50s and beyond, 40s as well, zone 2 is the way to go. So in zone 2, you're actually training your muscles to use oxygen in a really, really productive way. It's a little bit of a fine tuning for your muscles. So let's talk about why zone 2 is going to have a greater fat burning effect than the other zones as you go up. All right, in zone 2, get this, the body is more likely to use fat as its energy source. That's huge. You have fat on your body. Let's use that for energy when we work out. So the body converts fat stores and glucose into ATP. That stands for adenosine triphosphate. So isn't that good to know? You can go out for a walk with your friend at a moderate pace for 30 minutes to 60 minutes, an hour and a half, and your body is gonna dip into your fat stores. And let's face it, zone 2 cardio is just easier on your body. You're not gonna get out of bed the next morning and feel like you've been beat up or you've been hit by a Mack truck. And a huge plus for zone 2 training is it's just easier on your body. Like I said, you're not gonna feel like you've been hit by a Mack truck. And here's another reason zone 2 training is great. There's tons of studies and research out there that confirms that this type of training has the lowest injury risk. And that makes total sense. I mean, zone 1 as well. So zones 1 and 2 have the lowest injury risk. And I don't care what age you are, that is so important. Safety first. And if you're looking into the future like me, that is so important because 20, 30 years from now, I want to be able to do the same things that I am doing today. And the other thing about some of those really, really intense workouts is they put your body under significant amounts of oxidative stress, and that's not good. So every time you go to exercise, think about, is this helping my body? Maybe reconsider doing the 50 burpees in class because, listen, 10 to 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, are burpees going to be your form of exercise? Probably not. And they're not doing that much for your body besides just getting your heart rate up anyway. So maybe pick a different form of exercise than a burpee, which, sorry, no offense, just that is one of my least favorite exercises as a trainer. High risk, low reward. I'd much rather see a client doing box jumps than a burpee. But as I always do in all my videos, I digress. Do things that feel great on your body and keep you in zone 2. Okay, so let's back up. What is oxidative stress? Oxidative stress is when there's an imbalance of free radical activity and antioxidant activity. And back to all those studies out there, because there are a lot of studies out there regarding this. Those studies are showing that high intensity exercise, prolonged exercise, can actually cause cell damage. So a lot of the things that we think are healthy for our bodies may actually in turn be unhealthy and damaging to our bodies. And on the flip side, zone 2, you know, it has been shown to produce a lot less free radicals. We like that. I like what I'm hearing. So no oxidative smackdown and burn fat, sign me up. Zone 2 all the way. Okay, so I know we kept it simple today, but hopefully I have convinced you to scale back on that cardio, to stick with zone 2, especially if you are on a fat loss journey or you are in midlife. And if you want, in another video, I can take a much deeper dive into the whole science behind this. But for now, I hope you guys found this helpful. If you did, leave me a comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up. don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you are the first to be notified as soon as my next video comes out. My name's Regan. This is Boom 50 Fitness, your new BFF. I will see you next Thursday. Stay in Zone 2.